The wind came first, sliding down the gulch like a knife drawn slow, cutting through cottonwood and bone. Eli Mercer felt it before he heard it. Christmas Eve had a way of sharpening the dark, turning the prairie into a waiting thing. He stood on his porch with a lantern in one hand and the other hooked in his belt. Snow whispered across the boards. The ranch slept uneasy behind him. Inside, his children waited with their stockings hung crooked by small, hopeful hands. Eli told himself he was only listening for coyotes or a loose gate, but the truth rode heavier. He had learned long ago that the night sometimes delivered more than weather. Sometimes it brought a soul that had run out of road. The sound came thin and wrong. Not a howl, not hooves. More like breath trying to remember how. Eli lifted the lantern and stepped off the porch. Boots crunching. The light carved a tunnel through falling snow. And there she was, folded near the fence line, coat torn, hair dark with frost. A woman shaped by hardship and stubborn will. She tried to rise and failed, whispering something the wind nearly stole. Eli knelt without thinking, the cowboy way, quiet and steady. He asked her name. She shook her head, eyes bright as a trapped star, and said only that she had no family. The words landed heavier than her body when he lifted her. He carried her inside where warmth lived like a promise. The door opened to a rush of lamplight and breath held tight. Noah and Emma stood frozen by the tree, their faces pale with wonder and worry. Eli laid the woman on the sofa, stripped the snow from her boots, poured water, moved as his father had taught him, gentle and exact. The woman watched his hands like they might vanish. When Emma asked who she was, the woman turned her face to the wall and whispered again that she had no family. The words sounded practiced, like a scar told often. Noah swallowed and said it was Christmas Eve, as if that fact could mend a stranger. Eli cleaned a cut along her temple and felt the tremor under her skin. The house breathed around them, pine and coffee and old leather. Outside the wind worried the eaves. Inside the clock ticked loud. The woman said her name was Clara only after Emma placed a blanket over her shoulders. Clara spoke soft and careful, each word measured. She said she had walked too long, trusted the wrong kindness, and learned to keep moving. Eli listened without prying. A rancher learns when to push cattle and when to wait. The children listened to eyes wide, absorbing a world bigger than their chores. Supper happened in pieces, bread torn, stew shared. Clara ate like someone afraid the bowl might be taken. Eli noticed the way she flinched at sudden sound, the way her gaze kept to doors and windows. When the tree candles were lit, Emma sang a hymn she barely knew. Noah kept glancing at Clara as if counting proof she was real. Later, when the woman slept, breath finally even, the children sat close to Eli on the rug. The fire cracked and settled. Noah asked if Clara would leave when the storm passed. Eli said he did not know. Honesty was the one thing he never rationed. Emma chewed her lip, then asked the question that bent the room. Can she be ours? Her voice held no trick, only hope and fear braided tight. Eli felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders like snow on a barn roof. He thought of graves on a hill, of a wife gone young, of nights he had counted breaths to keep going. He looked at the woman sleeping, the way pain had softened into rest. He said being ours was not a thing a man could decide alone. Noah nodded, as if understanding more than his years allowed. He said families were made by staying, not by blood. The storm leaned harder. The windows rattled. Eli banked the fire and made a bed closer to the hearth for Clara. He stood a long time watching the room, the stockings, the small wooden toys he had carved after midnight shifts. The children asleep now, one on each side of the hearth like bookends of faith. He wondered what mercy asked of a man on Christmas Eve. He wondered if the prairie was testing him or offering a gift wrapped in need. Outside the wind howled like a judge. Inside the house held its breath. Near dawn Clara woke and met Eli's eyes. Fear there still, but also something like trust trying its first step. She whispered thanks and turned away. Eli said she was safe for the night and for the day to come. He did not promise more, yet the word safe carried farther than promises ever did. The lantern burned low, the storm eased, and Christmas waited on the other side of sleep. Holding a question that would not let the house remain the same morning crept in pale and hard, the storm loosening its grip but leaving the cold sharp as a reprimand. Eli rose before the sun, habit more than duty, and stepped outside to read the land. Tracks marked the snow near the fence line, not just Clara's fading steps but others too. Boot prints pressed with purpose, circling once then veering south. Eli felt the old warning stir in his chest, the kind that comes from years of open country and closed mouths. He studied the prints, memorized their weight and spacing. Then he raised them with a pine branch. Christmas or not, the prairie did not forgive carelessness. Inside the house woke slow. Emma stirred first and padded to the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Noah followed, already dressed. The children spoke in whispers, as if afraid the night might hear them. Clara sat by the fire wrapped in a quilt, color returning to her cheeks but guardedness still set in her jaw. Eli poured coffee and slid a mug her way. She accepted it with both hands, warmth blooming like a secret. She asked about the storm, about the land, careful questions meant to measure safety. Eli answered plain, said the ranch was quiet, said Christmas would come whether folks were ready or not. Breakfast passed with the soft clink of spoons, the children watching Clara when they thought no one noticed. After, Emma fetched a ribbon from her pocket and set it on the table, said it was meant for the tree but maybe Clara could have it. Clara hesitated, then tied it around her wrist like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The room softened at that. Even the clock seemed to tick kinder. Noah asked where Clara was headed before the storm. She stared into her cup and said nowhere that wanted her. Eli caught the children's eyes and shook his head just once. Some roads needed time before being named. By noon the sky cleared to a brittle blue. Eli hitched the horse and rode the perimeter, checking gates, mind turning over the tracks he'd hidden. When he returned, Clara stood on the porch breathing the cold like it might teach her something. She told him then, halting, about men who took what they wanted, about working kitchens and laundries and leaving before debts turned into chains, about a promise broken hard enough to bruise trust. Eli listened, hands resting easy, said nothing that would hurry her words. When she finished, he said no one would take anything from her here, not without answering to him and the land. The children took Clara to the barn after, showing her the calves and the old mule who liked apples. Laughter rose and fell like birds startled into flight. Eli watched from the doorway, seeing how Clara's shoulders loosened when Emma's hand found hers, how Noah's careful explanations gave him purpose. Family, Eli thought, was sometimes a thing that happened sideways, not by plan but by proximity and care. The wind lifted straw and carried it off. Harmless now, the day warmed enough for breath to slow. Trouble arrived with the sound of a distant engine. Eli heard it before he saw the truck, dusting the road that led nowhere good. He told the children to stay inside. Clara stiffened, eyes darting. The truck stopped short of the gate. A man leaned out and called a name that was not Clara's but landed like a hook. Eli walked down the drive, boots steady, hand near his belt. Words exchanged cool and brief. The man claimed he was looking for a worker who'd run off owing pay. Eli said no one here matched that story. The man's eyes slid past him toward the house, measuring. Then the engine growled and the truck turned away, leaving silence heavier than before. Inside, Clara shook, the children hovering close. Eli set another log on the fire and spoke firm and slow. Said the man would not be back. Said fear did not get to decide what happened next. Noah asked if Clara was in trouble. Eli answered that trouble was a thing people did, not a thing people were. Emma took Clara's hand and did not let go. Clara's voice broke when she said she did not want to bring harm to the ranch. Eli said the ranch had seen worse winters and stood. Christmas had a way of testing what folks meant when they said shelter. Night fell early again. Stars, sharp as nails, they ate by lamplight. Shared stories small and safe. Clara spoke of a mother who sang to keep the dark out. Emma sang the hymn again, stronger this time. Later, stockings were checked and hopes named. Clara lingered by the tree, eyes wet but steady. She whispered that she had never been asked to stay before. Eli said staying was not a debt. It was a choice made each morning. Outside a coyote called and was answered far off. The prairie listening, the house holding fast. Christmas pressing closer with its quiet demands. Christmas morning broke clean and cold, the kind of dawn that feels like a verdict. Eli woke to the children already whispering, stocking wool brushing the floor. Clara stood by the window as if guarding the light. She turned when Eli entered and smiled. Small but real. The tracks from yesterday were gone. Wind and sun having their say, yet the sense of being weighed had not lifted. Eli saddled the horse before breakfast, a habit of readiness. The prairie taught men to meet trouble early or pay later. The knock came mid-morning, sharp as a cracked bell. The truck from yesterday sat crooked at the gate. Another man beside it, heavier set, eyes hard with the patience of those used to taking. Eli stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Voices carried low and tight, claims made, lies shaped to sound like law. The men said Clara belonged to them by debt and ink. Eli said people did not belong to people. Not here. The children watched from the window, Emma clutching the ribbon still tied to Clara's wrist. What followed was brief and ugly. A shove, a hand moving wrong. Eli's warning delivered plain. The prairie has a way of backing truth when spoken firm. A neighbor rode up, drawn by noise. Then another, rifles resting but not raised. Community forming like a fence line. The men saw the math change and chose leaving over learning. Engines snarled and dust lifted. The road swallowed them whole. Silence fell like a blessing hard won. Inside the house the air loosened. Clara sank into a chair, shaking spent. Noah asked if it was over. Eli said over was a word folks used when they needed comfort. But that what mattered was now, and now they were safe. He turned to Clara and said she could go if she wished when the roads opened, or she could stay through winter, through spring, through the work of finding what came next. Choice placed gently is still choice. Dinner came early, the kind that felt like a celebration. Bread warm, meat tender, laughter finding its way back. Gifts were simple and worn smooth by care. Emma gave Clara a scarf she had knit too long. Noah offered a carved bird, wings spread as if mid-decision. Clara wept then, not loud, but honest. She said she had never been given things without cost. Eli said love was not a ledger, it was a practice, learnt daily and imperfectly. After, they walked the ridge, the land opening wide, snow sparkling, the world big enough for new starts. Clara told them she once dreamed of a place where mornings did not demand escape. Emma asked if dreams could be kept. Noah said kept things needed tending. Eli listened and felt something mend. Slow and sure, the prairie did not rush healing. It allowed it. That night, by firelight, the question returned without being asked. Clara said she did not know how to be family. Eli said no one did at first. The children moved closer. Emma took Clara's hand. Noah leaned in, and Clara whispered the words she had held back. If she could stay, not as a guest, but as theirs. Eli nodded, the kind of nod that carried promise without pressure. The house seemed to settle. Like timbers finally true, spring would come later, with calves and green and long days, but Christmas held the hinge. Years on, folks would say the Mercers took in a stranger and found themselves enlarged by it. But on that night it was simpler. A woman who thought she had no family chose to stay. Children who dared to ask found their answer. And a cowboy learned that the hardest work was not breaking land, but opening a home. The prairie kept watch, and let it be so.